I was chatting with a client the other day about how the practice of cultivating a felt sense of self and a felt sense of being is one of the most powerful things that you can do across all areas of life. And the conversation that we were having was the person I was having the chat with was wanting to, had had some experiences in conversations where they hadn't spoke their truth, where they felt they'd retreated within themselves for fear of attack, rejection, or their thoughts not being approved of, and didn't like that feeling. And so wanted to be someone who was solid within themselves, their opinions, their truths, and who spoke up when they found it necessary to do so. And so what I shared with them was that the ego is what we think we are. And so anything that you think you are, on some level, in one way or another, you are going to have some insecurities about. You are going to fear being attacked for, and therefore will have some defensiveness about, because the ego tends to defend itself, and we tend to defend our identities. Because if we are not what we think we are, well then what are we? Which is a great question to explore, that brings up the fear of uncertainty, of not knowing self. And when I say knowing self, I mean not having a felt sense of connection to self. And so when we have a philosophy, we have our values, we have our belief systems and our opinions on things, we are identified with that belief system, we are identified with that value system, that philosophy. We relate to ourselves and experience ourselves and know ourselves as someone who thinks that way. And by being someone who thinks that way, there are particular groups that we sit in. There are also, by nature of opposites, particular ways of thinking, and therefore certain groups that we conflict with, or that we do not identify with. And therefore, by not identifying with that group, we know ourselves as not that. And so it's, it can be explored a lot and unpacked a lot, it being what we think we are, the ego, and all the different identifications that we have. Yet the point that I was getting at with this client is that a great way to go about being more solid within yourself and your views in conversation is to be as least identified with them as possible, because otherwise you will feel insecure about your views at times. You'll feel as if they are being attacked, and you'll feel the need to defend them, which is will have a stiffness, will have a rigidity to it. You won't have a flexibility or a freedom of being non-attached to those views and belief systems, because you will think that if they are wrong, or if they are being challenged, then who you are is wrong, and who you are is being challenged, criticized, ridiculed, attacked. And so there is an investment in the belief system, or the opinion or the view, keeping it alive, because you're keeping a sense of yourself alive, because fuck, that's annoying. I'm going to keep the video though, because you know yourself in relation to the belief system and the value system. So this is where you will tend to defend that point of view, even if logically you're beginning to see its flaws and its mistakes, because you are keeping your sense of self alive, because your sense of self is attached to and therefore dependent on this belief system existing and staying alive. And so inherently you're trapping yourself and constricting yourself. If you are in that same conversation with a felt sense of who you are, a connection to a felt sense of being, you're free, you are flexible. You know that the surviving of this point of view, the surviving of this opinion, whether it lives or dies, does not matter. And that your sense of self and your living or dying is not dependent on the external belief, view, opinion, and so on and so on. This, fundamentally at your core, is what will support you in being solid in the views that you choose to believe in at any current time, knowing that ultimately your personal truth can shift from day to day, and you have no restriction to always think that way, to always defend that point of view. that you can be flexible, you can be free. So a practice that I would suggest is to cultivate a felt sense of self, a felt sense of connection to being that is beyond words, beyond labels, beyond judgments. And a great way to go about doing this, in fact, is get the book The Power Now by Eckhart Tolle. If you've already read it before, read it again, the first 100 pages at least. Even the first 70 pages will give you the language that he uses, the description of being, the introduction to being in those first few pages will help you to be drawn into a deeper connection with self.